Hello everyone, today we're talking about L'Heure Bleue, and I always get nervous whenever it's time to talk about one of these, titans of perfumery. And this is why I've never done a proper Shalimar review until now. Well, mainly because there's so many other good reviews on Shalimar and I don't want to repeat myself ad nauseum. But L'Heure Bleue is one of my most favorite scents ever. And I'm afraid I'm going to be rambling a lot because I don't have anything prepared. I don't have any script. So I'll just tell you what I feel about this fragrance. So today we're going to be talking about the X-ray of L'Heure Bleue, and just look at this color. This is a new X-ray. It's not a vintage. This is a bottle from 2021. But let me tell you, this is not the color it came in when I got it. This is a fragrance that ages so well, not only in terms of color, that's the vanilla, that's why it's changing color. My other bottle of L'Heure Bleue is an eau de parfum from 2017, and look at this color, right? Look at this color. It's so aged, and this only gets better with time. I think this is one of the reasons why it's one of my most favorite scents, not just at Guerlain, but out there. It's one of those scents that with time, it only gets better. And this also has been with us since 1912, done by Jacques Guerlain as well. Stems directly from Après l'Ondée. The composition is so similar. We'll talk about that. And I do have another recent bottle with the changed label, something I really didn't like. The fact that they changed the labels for Mitsuko and L'Heure Bleue, such iconic labels. The smell is exactly the same. It lasts exactly the same, but they are different because my bottle is just a bit more matured. I did smell something older from L'Heure Bleue, and it was gorgeous, but not very different from what we get today. So let me tell you what I feel about L'Heure Bleue. This is, oh God, this is such a perfect scent, and let the rambling begin. So this to me is a very melancholy scent. Not just because of the state of mind maybe when this was being created and this was being launched, 1912, 2 years before the start of World War I, because World War I didn't start all at once. There were signs, there was the entire spirit of the age, just before the start of the war in 1914. There was the French revanchism from 1870s, I think. They wanted to get back Alsace-Lorraine. I'm not going to go through the history because I don't know it all that well, but all I know is there was this current, there was this feeling of dread of something is going to happen, which is hopefully different from what we're going through today. I don't want to be very pessimistic, but I think it's quite fitting in terms of feelings that whenever I smell L'Heure Bleue, I think it's something that's very relevant today. So this centers on blue flowers. It's called the Blue Hour because the story of L'Heure Bleue, right? Jacques Guerlain was having a stroll with his wife on the Seine, and it was the blue hour. That's just before dusk. That's the magic hour, right? When the sky is a very deep shade of electric, almost blue, and all the buildings on the Seine, because I've also experienced this firsthand and it was spectacular. All the buildings on the Seine get this glowing golden color because of all the lights and because of the reddish hue in the atmosphere just before dusk. It is a very poetic hour. It's best used for taking photos. It's best used for videos. It's, you know, it's magical. It's just amazing. And Jacques Guerlain was inspired by the blue hour and wanted to capture that moment in a scent. And I think he succeeded perfectly. Now, he used blue flowers such as iris, violets, and heliotrope to create the impression of the color blue. These aren't called blue hours, blue flowers, not just because of their color. They are called blue flowers also because of the fact that they are powdery and they are cold. These are cold inducing smells. They're not warming, spicy, ambery scents. L'Heure Bleue, just like Vol de Nuit, which is another fragrance that stems kind of from the same pillar of fragrances, which all traces down to Après l'Ondée. They all have a sort of coldness, a coolness running through them, which is also very fresh, and it balances things out just perfectly. L'Heure Bleue isn't only blue flowers. When I first smelled this, and I should apply the extrait as well. I will apply this on the skin because it's, you know, perfectly used on the skin. By the way, L'Heure Bleue is a very musky scent, and musky scents are best applied on the skin. It's just a courtesy because they do change quite a lot on the skin. On the blotter, they're just more sterile as L'Heure Bleue could ever be, you know. When I first smelled L'Heure Bleue in X-ray form, it was after my first visit at the Guerlain boutique, and this was such a magical experience for me because the lady there, she gave me a sample of the X-ray. After that, I was supposed to meet a friend. We went on a walk on the Seine, and of course it was getting late and it was the blue hour, and I remembered, of course, well, wait, I have the perfect thing for this moment. So we dabbed ourselves in L'Heure Bleue X-ray, and we just experienced it as we should have, I suppose. The first time I smelt it, I only got iris. And to this day, I still think that L'Heure Bleue is the perfect iris scent. I don't think there's a fragrance. There are so many irises, and iris is my favorite note in perfumery. I have many iris fragrances that I love, but I think that L'Heure Bleue is the epitome, is the ode, the perfect ode to iris, to an iris scent. The X-ray is just so rich, especially in its sillage. This is why I cited earlier a thing that Sylvain Delacour said about Après l'Ondée. While Après l'Ondée is a painting done in pastels, watercolor, L'Heure Bleue is full-on, deep, electric shades, very rich shades of blue, creams, silvery whites, you know. It's very high HDR, high dynamic range. It is a huge mural compared to the smaller, you know, more intimate Après l'Ondée. It's so gorgeous that it filled the air around us, and just with a few dabs, it is so potent, you know. It was 2019, and it was back then when Guerlain was still, you know, great. You could say that about Guerlain. Not so sure about today, when they still had all the X-rays. And I asked her, you know, which is the most beautiful X-ray that you hold, in your opinion? And she said, hands down, that's L'Heure Bleue. It's the best done. All the extrays are beautiful, and now I am lucky enough that I have most of them, I think. But I still think that L'Heure Bleue is just the best. Now, I remember thinking, well, you don't need the extrait. Not really. When you have the eau de parfum, you don't need the extrait. And it's still true to some degree. But if you're a fan of L'Heure Bleue and want to experience L'Heure Bleue that's just a bit more, you know, everything is amped up, then you kind of need to at least smell it once just to understand where it's coming from. Since then, my nose has changed and I am able to pick up a lot more things in L'Heure Bleue other than the iris. Okay, let's start with the orange blossom. The orange blossom is it was very difficult for me to isolate, and I was able to isolate it because of the extrait. Because in the extrait, it's just sweeter, more generous. So usually orange blossom is this citrusy note, citrusy, slightly floral. Now, because L'Heure Bleue is also about this beautiful jasmine, the orange blossom becomes a lot more floral, and it becomes a lot sweeter, a lot more bubblegummy, I should say. It's almost like the smell of a tuberose. And I remember when I smelled Libertine Neroli from Francesca Bianchi, which is a gorgeous neroli scent. When I smelled that for the very first time, I thought, oh my god, this is the orange blossom from L'Heure Bleue, without everything else, you know, without the blue flowers, without the carnation, without the powderiness. It's just the sweetness of the orange blossom with it, which is so gorgeous. Now, there's also the almondy side, which is the tonka, right? And again, the tonka is there whenever you smell L'Heure Bleue in all iterations, but it's just more obvious in the extrait, because the extrait is just heavier, it's a lot more oriented towards the base, and it's tonka as part of the Guerlain, of course, that's just so rich and almondy, and it reminds me of other fragrances that are so rich in tonka at Guerlain. Cadine, Plus beau jour de ma vie, even Mon Guerlain to some extent. Together, you know, the orange blossom with the bitterness of the almondy tonka, they create, and of course with the jasmine, because I think that one is also important. Got a wasp near me, which is fitting because they create the impression of honey, which is more present in the extrait than anywhere else. It is present in the eau de parfum as well, but it's just a bit drier in here. But in the extrait is just clear honey. And it reminds me, in the stage that it's in right now, it reminds me, some of you may know it, Mon Précieux Nectar, which is again another fragrance that I absolutely love. It's a almost lifelike rendition of floral honey at Guerlain. That one's gone, I think, yeah. Everything comes down to L'Heure Bleue, I think, at Guerlain. It's not a pillar scent per se. It was derived from Après l'Ondée, which is the pillar scent, but I think it became more influential at Guerlain than Après l'Ondée, and it kind of took over and influenced other scents from then on. And in the extrait is where you find leathery aspects. You know, as I said, this fragrance is mostly about violets, which comes with ionones, and orris with its irones, and heliotrope, that it cannot, you know, it has to contain the impression, just a slight impression of suede, maybe not leather, but suede definitely. And in the X-ray, it is suedey, very delicate, but it is there, and it's so gorgeous, this one. L'Heure Bleue doesn't smell the same every day when you apply it, and it's such a beautiful experiment. I've done this many times, to just wear L'Heure Bleue many days in a row, and then you'll be able to get distinct stages and distinct facets of the same scent. It's such a gorgeous time, such a celebratory time, whenever the carnation accord blooms on my skin. Carnation is quite obvious in L'Heure Bleue, quite obvious in the X-ray, and it's that creamy, woody, spicy, eugenol type of smell that's also very buttery, almost to the point of being a bit rancid smelling. It's a bit animalic smelling, because I suppose because of the musks and because of the orris and because all the animalics inside, but it becomes just this very human kind of smell. It's a very beautiful carnation. I think it's definitely my favorite carnation smells ever. When this appears on the skin, that I say I'm having a good L'Heure Bleue day, you know. It is just a testament to how rich and complex this smell is, because I've been on and on about L'Heure Bleue, and I haven't, you know, gone through the notes. The notes are so similar to Après l'Ondée. The differences between the two fragrances are there, definitely. I did smell, but I don't own the eau de toilette for L'Heure Bleue, because I don't think there's any point. My favorite thing about L'Heure Bleue is just how heavy it is, you know. But also L'Heure Bleue tends to be this almost silvery, fresh, delicate thing at times. So there might be something there in the eau de toilette as well. So I might just get that at some point. So again, anise, neroli, coriander, which isn't very obvious, although there are clear hints of spicy greenery in L'Heure Bleue, definitely. And there is such a thing as a culinary aspect. Culinary, maybe something like tarragon, not necessarily coriander, but maybe something like tarragon in this. Then you've got bergamot, heliotrope, carnation, violet, cloves, which is mostly the same thing. Neroli, ylang, which is so beautiful here. Ylang isn't something that's obvious in L'Heure Bleue, but just like with the carnation, at times you will get this creamy, fruity ylang. Whenever I smell L'Heure Bleue, if I squint really hard, I can pull the notes apart, but its olfactive imprint is just so familiar to me that it just smells like L'Heure Bleue. There is no point in, you know, dissecting it and going through the different notes and aspects, because it's just so unique, right? Whenever something smells like L'Heure Bleue, it's just L'Heure Bleue, right? Then you've got rose, jasmine, tuberose, which I think is very fitting. I think it's that sweetness I attribute to the neroli, but it's just so clear neroli. You have to smell neroli to really be able to isolate that. Then you've got iris, vanilla, benzoin, sandalwood, tonka musk, and vetiver, which, you know, the same as with Après l'Ondée, almost the same. And let's talk about the vanilla. L'Heure Bleue is my favorite scent because it's also my favorite use of many other notes, right? So it's my favorite iris, it's my favorite tonka, it's my favorite jasmine, it's my favorite neroli, and it is also my favorite vanilla, because vanilla in this, and let me be clear, L'Heure Bleue is one of the most powdery scents that I own and I've smelled, and This also is because of the vanilla, but as powdery as L'Heure Bleue is, it's never too much, you know, it's never overpowering, it's never, it's so perfectly balanced. And I think this is also because of the use of vanilla. Vanilla in this is so perfectly dosed that it's never too much. It's not gourmand. It's not like the vanilla used today in fragrances. And I shouldn't, you know, it's not vanilla's fault. It's always the perfumer's fault, I guess, or the perfumer's merit. The vanilla here is perfectly dosed. It's just so faint, but it is there. It's powdery and comes in wave after wave. Emits the first wave, then it cools down. In comes the blue flowers, in comes the freshness, in comes the coolness, the spiciness. Then you're hit with another wave of vanilla. And this just goes on and on and on. But never is it explicit or overt vanilla. It's just there for good measure, and oh my god, what good measure that is. If every fragrance used vanilla like this, I would be a fan of vanilla. And it's not fair, because judging by the vanilla used at Guerlain, I could say I am a fan of vanilla. I am a fan of vanilla, definitely. And vanilla is something that's so misunderstood most of the time because of its use in the modern gourmands, you know. That's not vanilla that you smell. That's ethyl maltol, God knows what, that's so sweet and sickly. Vanilla isn't sweet. Vanilla is floral. Vanilla is woody. Vanilla is bitter. Vanilla is dark. Vanilla is clovey, a spicy cloves element to vanilla as well. And I think the best of the horrid extrays, horridly expensive extrays that they launched, is still the vanilla extray, Vanille Planifolia. I'm sure that's the best of the lot. And there are definitely hints of the Guerlain vanilla in this. Whenever I smell L'Heure Bleue, I also smell the dry down of Shalimar. I also smell Lui, I also smell Spiritueuse Double Vanille. I also smell a bit of Metallica. There's so many vanilla scents at Guerlain that they are just so correctly done. I love this scent so much, and I love the fact that it has such a beautiful trajectory. The next video I'll do today is about Habit Rouge Parfum. And as part of another tangent right now, I want to speak about the fragrances that are done today and the way that they are created only with the sole, you know, the sole purpose of selling by hooking you in with the opening of the scent. So fragrances nowadays are created, well, not all of them, but most of them. All the work goes into the opening, and the opening smells lovely, and then you buy the fragrance. When you wear it, as time passes, it turns into this mess of musks, something that lacks any character, and it's, you know, they're all the same because everything was spent on the opening. Now, L'Heure Bleue and Shalimar and all, you know, Mitsuko, all the classics, right? Naema. It's not just about the opening. The opening is great because those fragrances are great, but it's in the dry down where these fragrances shine. And the dry down isn't something you'll experience on a piece of paper, you know, on a scent strip. You'll always experience this on the skin. And when it comes to L'Heure Bleue, it is just, this is it, you know, it's in the dry down where L'Heure Bleue shines. Not to say that it doesn't shine all around, but you know, I remember Amy from Savor Salvage Scent. when she spoke a few years ago, when she spoke about L'Heure Bleue, and she said something about the ladies' undercarriage, you know, the smell of, let's say, the human body, let's say the smell of private parts. L'Heure Bleue is musky, right? It's musky, and it becomes gradually dirtier, you know, never too much, never offensive or anything, but sexy and interesting. It's more than 100 years old, but it's just so relevant today in its sexiness and its audacious, explicit, raunchy dry down. It is spectacular, and I always tend to forget that first and foremost, L'Heure Bleue is about musks, and the musks shine on the skin, and that's it, right? This is why I love it. I love it because it's my favorite on so many levels. I think it's the most beautiful rendition of the Guerlain. I think it's the most, as I said, the most beautiful iris, the most interesting vanilla use, most gorgeous neroli, and its simplicity, right? It's so melancholy, it's so elegant, it's so such and such. You know, you just can't beat L'Heure Bleue. I think it's the fragrance that represents me the most. I still think you don't need to buy the X-ray, but if you can, go for it, because it's definitely worth it. Definitely go for the eau de parfum. You can find it quite cheap. I mean, try it first. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you'll love it. But for me, this is, I think, the fragrance that represents me the most. I think it's the fragrance that I love the most, not just at Guerlain, you know, out there. It is, this is it. This is it. I love it to death. And I think that drop of melancholy, you know, just works. And that drop of nostalgia. But there's also hope, you know. I should say that Jacques Guerlain, you know, the story goes that Jacques Guerlain gifted this fragrance, made it for his wife, and she never wore anything else. And I definitely can see myself wearing nothing else for a lifetime. And that's from somebody who has more than 200 fragrances. And yes, I could. This is the fragrance I reach for the most in my wardrobe. And that's it. So there goes my review or my ramblings on L'Heure Bleue. Hope you liked it. Hope you found something useful. And, you know, do leave me your impressions of L'Heure Bleue, what you think of it. And until next time, remember, fragrance creates memories, and may yours be happy.